this is the very first ever women's soccer gold medal.
With a World Cup and 2 Olympic medals under her belt, Brianna Scurry had the football world at her feet. But a blow to the head while playing for her club, the Washington Freedom, in 2010 changed all that. Her trainer immediately knew something was wrong.
She comes out to meet me and she has her hands out and she's like, "Are you okay?" And she looked me dead in the eye and I said, "No, I'm not," and I haven't played since.
For the next 3.5 years, Scurry suffered headaches, depression, and eventually thoughts of suicide. Studies suggest it could take women longer to recover from head injuries than men.
90,000 fans are screaming in the World Cup final, and I'm trying to make a penalty kick save, and I can focus on that panel of that ball, and I can completely block out all of these people. To go from being able to do that and a level of focus to not being able to hold a thought in my head.
And she's not alone. The American Academy of Neurology says female athletes are 50% more likely than their male counterparts to have a sports-related concussion. Right now, scientists can't explain why that is, but they're calling for more research into gender differences when it comes to concussions. As for Scurry, she was able to rebuild her life when a doctor finally diagnosed her with spinal nerve damage. While sports medicine experts say data on women's head injuries are still hard to come by, gender-specific treatment options could be on the horizon.
I think having individualized care is really important, whether it's about gender or whether it's about sport or age, and that is the way medicine is headed. So I do anticipate, some sort of movement in that direction.
But clinical studies often take between 5 and 10 years to produce. So Dr. Tanaka warns gender-specific treatments could still be a way off. In the meantime, Scurry hopes football's world governing body will act immediately to better protect players.
I think having your team doctor be the doctor that determines what goes on is something that can be changed, and I think FIFA can make that change very quickly. Second, there should be a head injury substitution rule that doesn't affect your 2 or 3 substitutions for a game.
FIFA introduced new concussion protocols in 2014, including allowing referees to stop games for 3 minutes for player assessments. For Scurry, football helped her dreams come true, but she says she's now painfully aware of the risks posed by contact sports. She now wants to make sure the game she loves does everything it can to protect the next generation of players.
So it's an area where we can expect plenty more research. Now, I'm glad to say that I'm joined now by Giles Gibson, who's live in Washington, D.C. Thank you very much for coming on to Beyond the Game. First of all, can you just tell us a little bit more about Brianna Scurry? She seemed very comfortable talking to you about her experiences, but the fact is the concussions really did affect her life.
Yeah, I think you could say that concussion affected Brianna Scurry's life in 2 ways, really. At first, after that head injury that she suffered in 2010, she really went onto this downward spiral of depression, and eventually she started contemplating suicide. But I think after she got the treatment that she needed, after she got diagnosed with spinal nerve damage and she managed to get back onto her feet, then I think concussion is now defining her life in a much more positive way. She's one of the strongest voices here in the United States about concussion awareness, about head injury awareness, and specifically when it comes to women athletes.
Well, that's great to hear. In the report, she actually suggested some changes to the rules in sport. Now, obviously, she was talking about soccer specifically, but is that realistically the next step when it comes to concussion in women's sport?
Well, I think we're seeing it throughout all sports, men's and women's. We've seen, as I was saying in the reports, FIFA have brought in protocols across men's and women's soccer to try and deal with head injuries better. Rugby have also brought in the HIA assessments, head injury assessments protocols as well. So certainly the sports are moving in that direction of protecting players better. But I guess the balance they've got to strike, especially in contact sports like rugby and the NFL, is protecting players on the one hand, but also not sort of gutting the very essence of these sports. Because for a lot of people who start playing rugby at an early age, for example, they love the contact, they love the physicality of the game. So it's for the governing bodies, it's a really tight balancing act between protecting players and also not gutting the sort of main essence of some of these sports.
Well, Dr. Tanaka, who was in that report as well, she heads up a programme specifically devoted to women's sports medicine. Are we seeing a lag in terms of science catching up with attitudes towards concussion?
Well, I think we certainly are. For many years, there was a big debate about head injuries and whether sports needed to do more. And as I was just saying, we are now seeing sports really recognising this as a major issue that they need to do to protect their athletes better. But really, as I was talking to Dr. Tanaka, she was very keen to stress that a clinical study can take 5 or maybe even 10 years to produce. Then you need a few more years for the findings of that study to trickle down into actual treatment of players. So I think it could be 10 or possibly even 15 years before we see really sort of very specific treatments to protect players better, especially on this issue of women and men reacting to head injuries in a slightly different way.
OK, Giles, thank you very much for coming on to Beyond the Game.